Okay.
What's up, guys? Coach Gaglione here. This is another edition of the Powerlifting for the People podcast. I'm your host, Coach Gaglione. Doing an interview today with Laura. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. So we're fresh off Squats for America, one of my all-time favorites. Get to do a little dress up and a little American theme. So Laura had a PR 270, which we'll get into a little bit later. But how you feeling since the meet?
I feel great, actually. I feel stronger since the meet, which is weird.
Very good. Yeah, I think we'll get into that a little bit later. I want to rewind, but I think for those that are listening that are unaware, we also, in addition to hosting full contests, we do some single lift stuff, and one of the only federations and one of probably the only gyms that we also do a squat only. So we have a squat only, a bench only, deadlift only, in addition to multiple full power meets that we do. And I think especially we'll get into, like, if you're maybe switching your deadlift stance, or maybe you're getting into wraps, maybe you're getting into powerlifting, maybe you're getting into a bench shirt. And I do think those single lift meets can provide a lot of value to kind of hone in on a specific skill or learn a new lift, which we'll get into in a little bit later. So definitely consider that if you're a newer lifter, or consider that if you are someone that's maybe, learning a new skill, maybe transitioning to a different category. So I want to rewind a little bit. I don't know if you ever thought about it this way, but we have a lot of similarities in our training, between the weight loss, between the powerlifting, between going in different weight classes. So I want to kind of rewind a little bit, and maybe and again, you comfortable as sharing as much or as little as you like, as far as the personal events around that. But we can keep it, more fitness related. But I just want to kind of hear about, like, how you kind of first got into working out. And then, most notably, I know before you joined our gym, started training for powerlifting, you also kind of went through like a big weight loss transformation. So what kind of got you into fitness, and then what kind of, got you, I guess, started with the whole weight loss and journey?
Mm-hmm. Well, I was always a big kid. I was always from Italian family, pasta and cannolis and whatever. We never really dieted. I was always heavy. I was just the heavy girl out of the group. And I finally had enough when I was about 21 or 22. And I just started little things like cardio. I had no idea what I was doing. But I started dancing in my living room. And I remember the day because Zumba came out on like the Wii game, and I was doing Zumba in my living room and I loved it. So I said, let me take a class. So I went to take a class. I got really good at it. And the instructor there was like, why don't you become an instructor? And I said, you know what? Why not? What do I have to lose? I'll get paid for working out.
What
So I started
how
a Zumba journey.
Really quick, and then how old were you at this point?
So I'm 38 now. So when I became a Zumba instructor, that was about 15 years ago. So what is that, 23, right?
And
So
then
around 21,
and was that about, were you like at your heaviest then, or did you like, or is that a little bit later, or kind of a similar
I
time?
was kind of around, I was always kind of around like 190s ish. And then when I got into Zumba, I lost some pounds. But then when I had my daughter, I ballooned because I didn't care about what I was eating. So I said, I'm having a baby. I can eat whatever I want. Right. So I ballooned up to 225. And even after I had her, I was still at 225, and I was busy mom, not sleeping, just eating at night. You know, you, when the baby sleeps, you sleep, and you just don't focus on eating. You focus on the baby. And before I knew it, I was heavy and I didn't feel good. I remember going up the stairs and just heavy breathing, and I was like, this is something I gotta fix. So actually when COVID hit was when I decided to start really working out more, and the gyms were closed. So I just took to the outdoors. I grabbed resistance bands. I looked up YouTube tutorials. I just did whatever I could. And in total, I lost about 70 pounds since then.
And then
And I
how?
go back and forth a little bit. Weights
Sure.
I've been gaining,
So
but
was there like a moment where you're like, I have to, like, or is it just kind of a gradual thing? Was there a moment you were like, I have to, like, get this under control, or like, what was
I,
it?
there was, there was a moment where I said in my head, I was like, you know what, let me start a diet. And I looked at myself and I took one of those before pictures, I stripped down and I just looked at myself for like the first time like in a long time, and I was like, where did I go? Like what happened? It happens so quickly, you don't even know. And you just one day, it's not like you wake up and you're bigger, but like you don't realize you're gaining and gaining until, especially leggings. I blame leggings because leggings just grow with you. So I wore a lot of leggings and and they started getting tight and I was like, what's going on here? So but yeah, I finally had a moment where I was going up the stairs and I couldn't really breathe at the top. And I was like, something has to get done. And then I decided to go on a diet. And the diet was hard for me. The diet was hard. So what I did, what I focused on more was moving at first. I was like, let me just start moving.
I, I, I
Just,
so I want to pause on two things for people because and then we'll just I want you to just kind of in your brain just kind of keep where you are. So number one, I think one thing that I've been we're talking a little bit before the recording. You know, I had at the time of this recording, I kind of injured slash re-injured my kind of right limb shoulder area. Um, and you know, one of the things that like I need to constantly remind myself, and sometimes I always try to reiterate to you guys. And I think now with social media, you're a parent. If you're a family man, listen to this. Um, we need to like kind of have time for ourselves, and we need to be more present, because I think a lot of times probably one of the reasons, and I don't want to speak for you, but like you just had a baby, so now your focus is like elsewhere, and you only have so much kind of bandwidth. And I think a lot of times we're always like on the go, and we're always moving, and a lot of this stuff tends to slide. So we're not even like aware of like what's happening. We're just kind of, so I think that when it comes to
mm-hmm.
health, when it comes to your fitness, I think the first thing it's like really important is just to kind of be present when you're eating, be present when you are starting a exercise routine, but especially like what you're putting to your body, especially whatever you consume, whether that's social media, whether that's TV, whether that's food, alcohol, drugs, all that stuff, anything that you're consuming. It's really important that you're present when you're doing it, because that mindless eating and just mindless consumption of all this stuff, I think that's when we can run into problems, like you said, because it doesn't just happen. You don't just gain 100. Like I didn't get to 340 like overnight. It took a long time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think that is kind of critical. And then the other thing I wanted to highlight too, and I agree with this, but especially we have that Italian kind of background, and so I think it's important that you enjoy social settings. I think it's important that you still enjoy food, and I think food can be entertainment. And I think that there's some people could be more robotic and just view food as fuel, and that's fine for some people. But if you could have a balance of like kind of understanding like the cost and the benefit to kind of having those social events, I think that's good. You just need to be present and account for it. So I think there's a lot of power, and that's what we'll kind of get into like the powerlifting a little bit later. I do agree that I think that if you could start to move first, I think that's an easier as long as you don't have any like major joint problems and stuff like that. But if you could, like you said, you found dancing was really kind of you just were really enjoying yourself. So I think that if you could find something, I know for me, like finding powerlifting, I ended up kind of doing it in an unhealthy way, and I've kind of thus been better with it. But if you could find a physical activity that you're excited to do, and then you're going to start to kind of just to kind of literally get moving, I think that's huge. So it doesn't have to, obviously, if you're listening to this, you probably have a strength orientation to some extent, but it could be a 5K, could be CrossFit, could be weightlifting, could be strongman, could be, summer, pick up softball, volleyball, but finding something where you just kind of can enjoy it, feel good, just to kind of get started, I think is huge. So, so anyways, you're starting to, you have a,
Oh boy, my dog's barking.
oh, Charlie's over here too. He's watching, but
He's probably like, what's going on? Who is that?
there's that pup. So now you're kind of aware of the situation. Your clothes aren't fitting good. You don't really, you're just not able to do the daily activities that you normally do. Like just kind of moving around is good. So when you started to kind of make some changes to your diet, what are some things that I guess you started to try to do, and how, and I know you said it was challenging. So why do you think that was so challenging for you?
It was challenging to a point where, like I said, the moving to me, just being more active was most important because to handle both at the same time, in order to up my exercise and change my diet, it was too overwhelming with especially having, my daughter. It was just too much. So I figured, I started moving and I got myself to the gym. But then it got to a point where I was putting so much work into the gym and then I didn't change my eating habits and I wasn't seeing progress, and it clicked because I'm like, I'm working and I'm sweating and I'm doing so much at the gym, but then I'm screwing it up on my food. And then it's like it's just all canceling each other out. So what I did was I noticed my biggest problem is at night when my daughter goes to bed. I love cheese and I love wine. So I would always get like just a sleeve of cheese, and I would just watch, like you said, mindless eating. I would watch something, and before I knew it, the cheese was gone, bottle of wine was gone, and that's why I started ballooning. So once I realized what it was that was holding me back, that's where I was like, all right, well, I'm going to cut it down, and I'm not going to take it out everything at once, because to me, from my own experience, once I cut something, I wanted even more. So I just kind of used less and less. So instead of a sleeve of cheese, I would have maybe 2 or 3 slices just to get that craving out. And I would have a glass of wine and I would water it down with some sort of soda or a seltzer or water or whatever. So I was having it, but I was still losing weight because I wasn't having as much. And then it got to a point where I had to cut that back and, so on, so on, so on. But I finally like realized what was holding me back and I recognized it. And I said, what can I do to change that? So instead of cutting it out, I just decreased it little by little until I was ready to actually just get it out of my diet.
Yeah. And I think that, at the end of the day, it's about, if you move more and eat less, you're going to create that calorie deficit. I think a lot of people
Yeah.
try to do too much too soon and then they burn out. And the same thing with training. They go from want to like go from not squatting to squatting like 3 times a week or something. It's just not reasonable. And it's not to say if you want to try to do that, but progress into it. Well, let's try like once a week. Let's try. And we have a lot of people here that, sometimes, a lot of times you're, coming to us like once or twice a week, but we're doing full body. Sometimes we're getting our main lifts in and we make it work. It doesn't have to be like this optimal, perfect plan, and you're still able to make progress. I do think that the other thing I want to kind of just plug my weight loss book. One of the things that we do with the troubleshooting guide, with our checklists, because a lot of people, like you said, you could be putting all this effort into one area, but if you're not putting effort into this area, then that could be why. Because a lot of people think they're spinning their wheels and they don't know why they're not seeing results, because maybe they have one of the box checks checked off, but there could be a couple over here that they're like not addressing. So that's where kind of working with a coach can be really good if you're just not aware of that. But the first step is aware of like what you're doing, what you're consuming. So I guess, so you lost about 70 pounds. So I guess what like gave you the spark to say like, okay, well, I want to go from dancing to barbells and powerlifting, and what got you the interest there?
Can I say divorce? No. I had a few things going on in life, and I was showing more of an interest in the gym as far as weightlifting. And I noticed a few people in the gym. I started like recognizing powerlifters and bodybuilders and seeing the difference of their workouts.
Yeah.
And I was talking to one of them in the gym, and he was an old school powerlifter, and I think he competed back in the day. And I just started asking questions. And for some reason I said, you know what, I want to try it because it looks really cool. And I want to get stronger and I want to scream under a barbell. And I said, I'm going to immerse myself in powerlifting. I'm going to find a powerlifting gym. I'm not going to do the YouTube stuff and just do it on my own.
Like learn how to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, actually learn the world, And so that's when I took to Google and I found you. And that's when I walked into your place, and I was skinny then. I had no muscle mass then.
We'll talk about the body changes because I think it's a good thing to highlight, but I think this is important. So the one thing I will say too, it's a little different now. I started doing this thing in 2006. I joke that I started doing powerlifting before it was cool. But for the longest time, powerlifting was like more like the misfits, and to an extent, maybe it still is, to a degree. A lot of times it was
Hmm.
I was a failed athlete. I didn't make it as a football player. I didn't make it as a wrestler. I didn't achieve my goals. I was hurt all the time. And that kind of drove me a little crazy. I was very depressed. I still had some, and I've had some other issues in my life too that, caused me to, but sometimes, those personal setbacks, those personal issues that you have in life can, I spoke with Steve, the other day about, some personal stuff, on a podcast as well. And, I talk about, you could like harness darkness, and it's not necessarily always the healthiest or best way to do it. But I do think that if you could channel that energy into a positive outlet and you get that aggression out, I think that could be it could be like a life changing thing if you could kind of take that and flip it into a positive, whether it's a death in the family, whether it's a bad breakup, or, something happens, you get whatever it is, you lost your job. And I think, for me, like I had a lot of personal setbacks as well. And with lifting, especially, I felt like I was like finally in control of something. The more effort I put into this thing, I saw my total go up. And that was like, for me, like as being the fat kid who was picked on, and, I was 200, I was, as a ninth grader, I was, 275 pounds. So like, I'm lighter and leaner than I was as a freshman in high school. And it's because of what I learned in the gym. So I think that, having that outlet is really important. Having that physical outlet, especially when things are not going so good, that hour that you spend at the gym could be like, whether it's a little bit of a mini escape, whatever you want to call it, but having that like positive time. So I'm sure it might have been a little intimidating, but you Googled us, you came in. So what was it like, I guess, the first couple of times you walked in, and I guess what was going through your head, when you first tried it?
I wasn't expecting to jump into a competition when I first walked in, but you were like, "Well, we have a competition in March, so would you like to sign up?" And I said, "Yeah, why not? Let's do it. I'm
That's
coming into the world.
it's
Hold on." Yeah. So, um, I when I first walked in, so like you said, you were picked on in high school, and so on and so on, and you were a failed athlete. I was never into sports. I was never an athlete. I was never any of that. I never had any after school programs. I kind of just went to school and went home, watched TV, ate bagels and ice cream, and wondered why I was so big. But I finally felt like I'm part of something, like a team. And it when I realized that, it was such an uplifting experience, because it was just like everybody is here, everybody has something going on in their life, everybody is here, and we're all helping each other, like when it comes to spotting people, or if somebody fails a lift, and then we talk to them about it and we say it's going to be okay, just keep going. It's just like that team feeling I've never had. And now I understand why people join teams and do sports and things like that. And it's just, if I could do it all over again, I would have done this a long time ago. But now that I'm doing it, I absolutely love it. But yeah, when I first walked in, you could just feel, especially at your gym, you could just feel everybody is there for each other, and nobody has like this I'm better than you type of cocky attitude. And it's like more of like a family and a team, and it's really great. It's really great. I
Yeah,
love it.
I think,
Wouldn't change it for the
yeah, no, I do think that, that was something that,
first squat, and I'm like horrified of my first squat.
yeah, no, I can remember, and we'll talk about your progress and stuff, in a few minutes, but, that was one thing that, I took from equipped lifting, and I wanted to kind of bring, because one of I don't know if it's an issue, but it's just something, now with, powerlifting is a lot more accessible, which is good. And what I'm kind of seeing more and more is that there's a lot of people that will tend to, you go to the commercial gym, you'll see a lot more people squatting, you'll see a lot more people deadlifting. But a lot of times people have their headphones in, they're doing their own thing, they have their own, they have their own snowflake program, and that's fine. And that's, and that might be great for some people. But I do feel that for people that weren't, like you said, someone like yourself who has never been part of something, never been on a team, never had a group, I think for me, like that's going to teach you a lot more learning how to work together, building those skills. And also when things are not going so great, you have your training partners to lift you up too. They literally like when you're
Mhm.
squatting and you have this weight where you're like, I might die. I don't know if my spine's going to snap, but you know that these people have your back. And that's like a really comforting feeling. And it's something that you really can't like,
Mhm.
when I like, when I'm, prepping for a meet or something and I have like 800 something plus pounds on my back, um, and just knowing that like you're safe, no matter what happens, you're safe. That's like a really, a feeling that some people will never have. And especially like I
Mhm.
said, coming from some sort of hardship, or maybe it's a failed relationship or a death in the family or something. I really think that a lot of people can use that in their lives, especially with, we've all gone through like a lot of, hardship over these last couple of years, a lot of craziness going on in the world. And um, so that's like one thing I want to definitely highlight, because I do think people really underestimate the power of what training in a group can do. And like I said, I know
Mhm.
I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay. And we do things a very specific way, because I do feel that this is a better way for someone that's, like I said, if you're a 20-something-year-old phenom athlete and you don't need help, that's fine. But that's not most people, right? So, obviously you came in, you started to learn a lot, you kind of started to kind of pick up on what we were about. I do tend to sometimes throw people into contests early on, because what I do want people to realize too is that if you're capable of doing the lifts, like and you want to really do this, like you want to see if you actually are going to enjoy it. So I think it is good to just not worry about what your strength level is, and just, because I'm sure like, so I want to talk about like, you just competed recently, done a few contests under your belt now, you know, um, talk about like what it was like, maybe at your first competition versus, the experience you kind of gained like up until this point, and maybe some of the things that you've kind of learned along the way.
Well, first, I'm very glad that you threw me into the competition because it was fun. It's all the competitions are fun. They're nerve wracking and they're fun and they're exciting and they're stressful. So it's like you have every single emotion just coming at you,
Right.
and it doesn't matter because when you're at the bar, it all goes away, and it's the best feeling. But I would say my first competition, I had no idea what to expect. Um, I heard a lot about competitions, but I just went in with the idea of focused on just doing what I have to do from what I've learned and just having fun. And that's really what I did. Um, my last competition, now I'm in the zone where I'm like focusing on my numbers. And my last competition, I don't know if you noticed, but I actually wanted to know my numbers. I never wanted to know my numbers going into competition because I feel like that mental block, like if I see a number that I get scared of, oh my God, I can't do it. We all know with my bench, it's like I see a plate on a bar and like my arms go limp. But I I think from the first competition to now, I'm so much more involved in my progress that I want my total to go up. I want to make an elite total one day. I want to be able to go to the Arnold one day. I want to be like this just monster. So now I'm paying more attention to my numbers. And when I saw the first opener was like 240, I was like, oh, 240. In my head, I was like, I got that. That's great. And then just to see the number now was made me, it made my confidence go up because I felt like I got that. I didn't look at the second number, but I did hear the third number, the 270. And I was like, I think I could do that. Instead of seeing the number and saying, oh my God, I'm going to die. So I think that was the big difference from the first to the last meet.
And I think that a lot of people, competing is a skill. So obviously now like you're like at a different level mentally, where, now what you're opening with was more than what you even did at your first contest, which is, exceptional. Um,
Woo!
Now you get better and better at performing. And this is one thing that
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes drives me crazy, because I'll see there's some really strong people on the island who have like never competed yet. And it's like, it's going to be a little bit of a rude awakening for them, because you could do all you want in the gym when it's like perfect conditions. I'm going to go when I'm ready. I have my perfect song, and it drives me crazy. You don't get to like do all that. It's like, so, I mean, and that's fine if you want to be a gym lifter, and that's fine. Like to me though, I just think I just admire people that can like, put their money where their mouth is, I had to lift it on this day in front of these judges under these conditions. And it may not be perfect. Maybe, something could go wrong. Maybe, there's so much that could happen. And, I think also having the guidance, having like, someone like myself who's really experienced handling people, getting the knee wraps on at the right time, and, calling your depth, and, warming you up properly at the right time, and helping with your nutrition. There's so many like little things. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely been, like I said, unbelievable progress, so far. And I do think, I think it's good to have like those little goals to help motivate you, but also be patient enough to realize that it's going to take time. So for anyone, I know you said you were happy that you kind of jumped in right away, but for someone that's maybe like a little nervous about competing, like what advice would you give someone that's just, kind of starting out?
Starting out, I mean, I think everybody's different. So if I'm very impulsive, so when you mentioned competition, I was like, sure, let's do it, throw everything at me. But I think some people aren't as impulsive or as nuts as I am. If they don't want to jump into a competition, I think that's fine. But I think if they are like a first time competitor, I think my advice for them would be the first time, like what you told me, just go and have fun and see what you can do, and just having the team behind you. And just to rewind to what you said about the team and having people behind you, and you had 800 pounds on your back, I feel like you can squat heavier and you have that safety net in
Yeah.
your head. Like, all right, well, at commercial gym and I don't have a spotter, I'm like, well, you know what? I don't think I should put that extra. But if you have people with you, you're like, let's see what I could do. But yeah, my advice for first time competitors would be just go in and have fun and see what you can do, enjoy the experience, and eat your carbs during the meet. And that's it.
Yeah. So speaking of eating your carbs, I do want to talk a little. I know you said, your body has changed. And like I said, I'll just say like, I think for the better, but obviously the scale number has gone up a little bit and kind of
Great.
yo-yo with a little
I'm
bit.
happy.
But so I think for a lot of women, that's like a hard, I guess, men too. And, I'll lump myself in that category. There's like a fine line because I do see, and this is not you. I do see sometimes with women, sometimes with big guys like myself. I was one of those people, I chased a 900-pound squat for a really long time, and I did, um, and I had to, and my health paid the price. And then I needed to spend and I ended up taking about 5 years to get my health back on track. And now I'm doing some pretty amazing things, but I could have, if I took my time and I was more dialed in with my nutrition earlier on, I would have saved myself a lot of time on the back end. So anyways, um, I do see some people that just kind of let their weight kind of get out of control. And then, not to get into like political stuff, but with like body positivity and all this stuff, you still want to be healthy, right? So I think it's important that you don't get too wrapped up in the scale number, but at the same time, you do need to have like kind of some boundaries and have your health in mind. So I guess for you, like seeing that scale number go up from like your lowest point, um, how have you been able to kind of deal with that mentally? And then for maybe women that are starting to strength train for the first time, it's not uncommon if you're a newer lifter to kind of see the scale go up. But if it's muscle mass, if it's your strength's going up, don't be alarmed. So for people that may be fixated on the scale or worried about getting like too bulky, can you just talk about your experiences, and then again, any advice that you have specifically for women? Because I could speak from the point of a man's perspective. I do think it's good for, if women are listening, that they also hear it from another female as well.
Well, what powerlifting has helped me learn is that carbs aren't the enemy. So I've learned to actually bring carbs back into my diet and make friends with them and make nice. Before I started the powerlifting, I was in like super calorie deficit, and I was just like, I was thin and I didn't have that much muscle mass. So I was happy with the number that I saw on the scale, because in my head, yay, I'm skinny, woohoo. But then when I wanted to get strong, I saw the number going up and I'm like, but I don't want to, I like, for me, the mental block of gaining weight from being such a heavy kid and seeing that number scary. You see that number go up and you're like, no, like what's happening? And at first you're like, I have to diet. That's it. I'm going to cut out carbs and I'm going to cut out sweets and no more cheat meals. And then you go like nuts, but then you kind of calm down. And I look at it like my lifts are going up. My strength is increasing. I'm doing so much more now than I was when I first started. So I don't think we should look at the scale. I think obviously for health reasons, don't go nuts and have a gallon of ice cream each night because of course you're going to gain the wrong type of weight. But I think especially as women, we get so scared when we get on that scale and we lie about our weight or whatever. And especially with the weight classes and the competitions, it's like, no, don't tell everybody my weight. But so for instance, I started competing in the 165 weight class. And this recent competition, I went up to the 181. And to me, the 181 scares me. But when I look at people that I'm like idolizing now and I'm watching their lifts on like Instagram and people that I've met in person and I see them in person, I see how strong they are and they can lift like houses. And I asked one and it was my friend Amber. I love her. She's like my idol. And when I met her and I asked her, I was like, how much do you weigh? And then she told me how much she weighed. And I looked at her and I'm like,
she doesn't
she's
look
at
like, yeah, she doesn't look like, and for the people that are listening, it's, Amber Hanson's one of, she's one of the best powerlifters of this time. And she's and I've gotten to see her compete in person a few times. She's very nice woman, and I kind of anticipate her to still but also if you look at her training, and she's not like, she doesn't carry a lot of body fat. She's probably walks around over 200 pounds.
it's just like
Which sounds like a heavy number, but she has a lot of muscle and she's one of the best female lifters in the world right now. So
and as long as you know that you're not going crazy on your diet and you see the number going up, but you know that you're not gaining the wrong type of weight, it kind of balances out a little bit. It's still scary, but it's still like, all right, you know what, let's keep it at this number for a little while.
Yeah.
and just work on our strength.
And if you look at like some of Amber's training, and if you look at like, so you're still like teaching and doing Zumba and like, I'm still doing cardio, so like, there's things that you could do to also help mitigate some of the stress of lifting. And, like I said, as long as you have periods, we also spoke a little bit about like, you should have periods of time where I'm just going to take an off season and work on body composition. I'm going to work on getting leaner, building some muscle, maybe drop some weight. Actually, right after a contest is a really good time to do that. So like, even I got a little crazy too myself. Part of it, I think, being in a healthy, happy relationship, you get like fat and happy. So I got a little bit too heavy last year. I was as heavy as 262, which again, that was kind of alarming for me. And one of my like main goals is to kind of maintain about 100 pounds of weight loss. And so that kind of magic number is 240. So anyways, I dropped about 20 pounds recently and I feel really good. And I did an in-body measurement. So it's not the most accurate thing in the world. You can do DEXA scan. So my muscle mass is the most it's been. So that's an objective measure. I'm also like looking at in terms of like my leanness. So even though I'm a little heavier, I'm carrying more muscle mass, and in terms of also subjective pictures. So you could take progress pictures, you can get DEXA scans, you could do things to help. And the other thing you could do as a power lifter is you could look at your Wilks or DOT score. So at my last contest, I did a 2100 total, which is my best total ever. But my formula was a little bit worse. It was close, but it was a little bit worse than my 2025 that I did in the 220 class. So my next meet, regardless of what I weigh in on, I'd like to total more, but also improve my formula. So that's another, if your relative strength is improving, that's another like kind of indication. So like, for example, for you, Laura, you can kind of see the next time you do a total, does your DOTS or Wilks score go up from like your 165 total? And that if that's the case, then you're probably not putting on too much fat. So that's just like another like metric you could do. So the scale is just one metric. So I think like the Wilks formula or, the new formula, some sort of coefficient. So that way, now if your coefficient is going down, you're probably putting on too much body fat too soon. And it's probably not, so you're probably, not as you're not really doing yourself justice. So you are maybe getting stronger, in absolute terms, but you're not pound for pound stronger. So I think in terms of people like us that still doing very good things, like a 270-pound squat for a female is nothing to scoff at. I think sometimes we get things twisted with the internet, with what's strong and what's not, but even for myself. But my point is that we are doing this for fun. We're not making like millions of dollars doing this. So you do want to have your health in mind. So these are just some like little tips. So I do like that. Yeah. So this, don't get too hung up on the scale. I think that's really good. The other thing I wanted to kind of ask you about a little bit before we close. So obviously you're a mom, and that kind of takes up a lot of your time. I know. So for people that are maybe like, I know there's some things like people call it mom guilt and different things, but in terms of like advice specifically for mothers that maybe they feel guilty spending time at the gym, maybe they feel like they don't have a lot of time. What advice can you give to, those people specifically?
Oh, I have that guilt every single time I have to find a babysitter to go to the gym. But I I would say anything that's going to make you happy, anything that's going to give you some sort of positive outlook on anything in your life. If you're going to the gym and you're finding a babysitter, I wouldn't feel guilty about that. I know it's hard because we feel guilty like, oh, well, I'm putting myself before my child, but sometimes you kind of have to, because you have to be present when you have a daughter, and especially my daughter, she's autistic, and I have to be so present with her when I'm with her, and I have to be on. And sometimes it's just very overwhelming, and I use the gym as my happy place. And I like I said, it's natural to feel guilt, but you have to look at it from a way where you're making yourself happy in order to come home happy and to be able to play with your kid and give them the best version of you. So if you're upset that you didn't get to go to the gym, and you're not feeling good about yourself, that's going to project onto your kid, and then you can't really be the best mom that you want to be when you're, deep down you're a little upset over anything. But then you go and you let it out at the gym, you come home, you're like, hey, who wants to play dinosaurs for the billionth time? I can do it now because I'm happy. So I wouldn't have any, I mean, it's hard and you're going to have the guilt, but I think moms take a lot. And I think we beat ourselves up on everything when it comes to anything parenting. But I mean, if you go to the gym and it makes you happy, or if knitting makes you happy, or whatever it is that makes you happy, you do it, and makes you a better person, better mom.
Yeah, one of my business coach, my former business coach, he would always use the plane analogy that when the plane's going down, they say you need to put your own mask on first. So I think especially for parents listening, if you're not healthy, if you're not happy, you're kind of doing your child a disservice. So I think that's really important and well said. I think that's because again, and I think sometimes, you know, at least what I've seen, sometimes you see parents that will kind of use their kid as, oh, well, they'll use their kid as kind of an excuse for kind of bad behavior. And I don't think that's acceptable. So, in terms of how we train people, it's really popular right now to do like very high frequency, high volume, long workouts. And some workouts when we're peaking for a meet take a little bit longer, but oftentimes we're in and out in like an hour. And
Mhm.
we have people achieving elite totals at a high level. We have some people that, like not again, I love you, Jose. If you listen to this, Jose, like we always say we're gonna have Jose as like the ringer because he looks like a plumber, but he squats like 600 pounds and does all these. It's unbelievable, and like he barely, he trains very minimally, and but he's been doing it for a really long time. And it's really incredible what you could do if you put in the effort with the right group, with the right program. You don't need to spend 3 hours at the gym. It's about
Mhm.
being efficient with your time, using the right exercises, using the right program, having a good coach. So you could surprise yourself if you only have time to go powerlift once a week for an hour, go do it.
Do it.
Better than
Hmm.
zero. Better than zero. And I know we've
And,
had conversations. Sometimes you've, been caught in a bind and, you're still making progress even with, less than ideal circumstances. And you just do the best you can with what you got. And if, you have 30 minutes, if you have 45 minutes, you just do what you can.
and then your child sees you going to the gym, and it's more common for them their mom getting stronger and stronger, especially I have a girl, she's my daughter, and I never saw my mom going to the gym. I never saw my dad going to the gym, so maybe that kind of transferred when I was younger to not being into sports and not being that physical, like, activity level was very low. And now that she's seeing it, it's only positive. So either way you look at it, it's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I always try to we say lead from the front, and that's like one of the reasons, I experiment exercises and weird programs and weird protocols on myself all the time. I try to, do the best I can with, eating, and it's one of the reasons why I still compete and still have goals. And yeah, I think that, if you're a parent, the best thing you could do is, when it comes to eating and exercise, they're gonna learn, they're gonna observe what you're doing. So, Charlie, Charlie, come here. Say
The
hi.
powerlifting.
So yeah, so it's leading by example is great. So yeah, I appreciate your time, Laura. We'll wrap up here. We had a lot of good tidbits for you guys. So, Charlie.
He's like, that's it, you're done here.
Right. It was a good run. But if you guys enjoyed the podcast, please share it. Please give it a 5-star review. Thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.